Hi, Amy. Thanks for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.
I first met Amy when ARC and JetBlue Ventures both took an investment in 3Victors, which is a super smart data company that ATPCO actually acquired at the end of last year. So when I met Amy, I got really fascinated with your career and your work at JetBlue Ventures, and I was thrilled to have you with us today.
Well, thank you.
So let's go ahead and get started and get to know you. So if you could tell us a little bit about your background, the different roles you've had, and how you got yourself to JetBlue Ventures.
Sure. So I am a 24-year veteran of the airline industry, dating myself totally. I actually started at Continental Airlines in 2000. I came out of an MBA program and was recruited there. And like many people in the industry, I started in revenue management and did that for a couple years and moved on to some other things. But what really changed my career is in 2004, I joined the founding team of Virgin America. In fact, there's probably maybe some old Virgin America peeps here. But yeah, we started in 2004 and built that airline from scratch. And I joined kind of before it was incorporated as an airline. So really the entire cycle of a startup, an airline startup, but a startup nonetheless. And through my time at Virgin America, I led the actual launch project. I did a lot on the commercial side, a lot of revenue generating ideas, tech for that, owned, the Sabre relationship and e-commerce and the contact center and a bunch of different types of technology that are really important in attracting and selling to customers. So that was really, kind of my expertise, so to speak. And I came, of course, Alaska Airlines purchased Virgin America in 2016, and my job was to lead the integration on behalf of Virgin America, and I had a counterpart at Alaska. So I went through the whole cycle of integrating the airline into Alaska. So it's a really interesting cycle to go from a startup, kind of founder, so to speak, all the way to the exit of that particular company. And learned a lot about mergers and how those work, and worked my way out of a job in 2018, and then was just trying to figure out what was my next step. And because I had spent so much time on new, interesting, emerging tech in the industry, which seems really old now, but was cutting edge back in the day. This job actually really resonated with me. So I found this role. I found my first role with JetBlue Ventures in 2018. I was in charge of the innovation side of the business. So let me tell you a little bit about JetBlue Ventures.
Yes.
So we are a wholly owned subsidiary of JetBlue Airways. I think there's some JetBlue folks here. And we are a corporate venture capital firm. So our job is to invest in startups. We look at everything that is considered travel tech. So it's a very broad mandate. And some of the things are, some of the startups we invest in are very different, right? So we cover, even climate tech, anything from consumer facing to climate tech. It's very broad. We have been around 8 years. We've invested in 52 companies and 2 funds. We're LPs in 2 funds. So we really have done a lot of work in the investment space. 3Victors obviously being one of them, and one of our exits, which is great. The other side of our business, we actually have 2 teams at JetBlue Ventures, is the innovation work we do for JetBlue and others in the industry. So we spend a lot of time helping JetBlue think about how to ingest emerging tech and how to actually work with a startup. It's very different to work with a startup versus an established provider. And so we do a lot of that. And then we do a lot of investing. And sometimes those things are the same and sometimes they're not. Sometimes we invest in things that JetBlue won't use or can't use or other travel providers find interesting. And at times we bring things to JetBlue that we won't invest in. So I started on the innovation side. I took over as president in 2021 when my predecessor left to go to a startup. It happens a lot. And it's been really great. I love kind of the work we do. We invest in early stage, so it's really fascinating to watch these startups grow from scratch. And I have that experience that I have been part of a startup that's grown from scratch. So, I like to think that I can be helpful to them and understand and empathize with where they are in their stage.
What a career. I just, first question really comes to mind is just to talk about, how you've seen the industry evolve over your career.
Yes. That is actually remarkable. I mean, 20 plus years in this industry has completely changed everything, right? I mean, if you think about it, in 2007, that's when the Apple iPhone was launched, right? So everything that we know about, mobile first technology really has been since 2007. And everything has grown from that, obviously. So the entire mobile experience within travel has happened during my career. And I remember on the early days of thinking about, mobile websites versus mobile native apps, and now that's kind of commonplace, right? But there's been a lot. I mean, think about in-flight experience, Wi-Fi and content and ordering food and just personalized service. All of those things have grown in my time in this industry. Kiosks were just beginning, are now commonplace. I mean, all of these things. It's 20 years is fascinating. It's been a lot, right? Biometrics, self-service tech, and contact center tech. I did own the contact center for a brief period of time at Virgin America, so I understand how much that has come along, and with chat and just all of the self-service AI. Yes. Okay. So of course, the newest and greatest is AI, which has actually been around for quite a while in machine learning, of course, but is now having its heyday with the generative AI kind of boom. So much has changed.
So much change. But I'm curious, is there anything that kind of surprises you about where we are today? Maybe things that you thought would be further along, or things that have leapfrogged in ways you never imagined? Like, what surprises you?
Well, 10 years ago, I was, at Virgin America, owning kind of all the revenue generating kind of parts of our business in terms of like e-commerce strategy, distribution, kind of the sales contracting process, contact center, all of those things. We were talking about personalized selling and personalized experiences and using data better. And I feel like that has taken a long time to really come to a point where we're actually starting to do those things. And I do think that AI is really leapfrogging that entire aspect of our business. And we will see, great strides in how we personalize and customize experiences for customers because of AI right now. So I would have thought we would have been further along. And I remember talking about this 10 years ago and being like, this is the thing, and this is the next big thing. And it's taken a long time to get there. And the other part of it probably is that I think it's fascinating that we still haven't solved all of our customer kind of help problems. So many times servicing, thank you. Yes, servicing. Customer servicing hasn't come as far as I thought it would have. And sometimes it's great to be able to talk to a person, but there's so many things that people still call contact centers for that they don't need to do, that they can do for themselves. And how do we accelerate that type of innovation within the industry is important. We actually invested in a company called NLX, and it basically takes your voice, so you call, you actually talk to the system, and it walks you through the self-service process. So it takes calls out of the queue. And the more we do things like that, the better I think this industry will be. And I'm surprised it has taken as long as it has to really fine-tune self-service. Yeah.
So I'm interested if you could share with the audience about some of the specific investments that JetBlue Ventures has made, maybe with the use cases of the revenue and distribution sectors. Not limited to that, but there's a lot of obviously interest in that here. So tell us about some of your investments.
Yeah, I didn't mention at the beginning. We actually have 5 investment themes, and one of them is loyalty, distribution, and revenue. So we think of this as being kind of the traditional kind of how do you sell, how do you attract, how do you retain customers in this very specific industry of travel, and we've done probably, I think, 11 or 12 investments in that space. Some of them are more focused on loyalty, but we have things like, we have a really great company that's focused on digital wallet and how you kind of store your identity in a digital manner in a better, more secure way. So there's things like that, obviously, in this bucket. But a couple that come to mind, we are early investors in Flyer. Which obviously I think probably a lot of people have heard of. It's been around for quite a while. In 2016, that was our very first investment. When they were very, very small. But they're using machine learning to obviously change how you think about demand, using different kinds of data sources, a bunch of different data sources, and think about how you forecast demand, how you customize pricing or more dynamically price products of various ancillary or flight, all of those kinds of things. So great company. We've been with them for a long time. Another one is Volantio. Volantio is really great. They help you figure out how to optimize your revenue kind of at the end of the life cycle of your flight. So say you have this flight's overbooked, this flight's super empty. How do you kind of entice people to move so that you can sell more of the overbooked, the really booked seats and kind of smooth out your revenue? Or their biggest use case, of course, is how do you manage oversell situations, either through overbooking or because it was a gauge change or something like that. And so they help companies figure out, like actually engage with a customer before it becomes a problem at the gate, which is amazing. 3Vectors, of course, is one of our great investments in this space. We have been really, impressed with those guys and how they've been doing, using different types of data and just managing data in a different way. So those are some, but we have a bunch in this space, but we're still looking. There's a couple areas that we haven't found kind of the right investment for us, distribution being one of them. We have, interestingly, a distribution company in bus travel, but not airline travel. So we have looked at a couple of, number of companies in this space, and we think there's something interesting in this next generation of distribution. We just haven't found the right one yet. We're pretty picky.
What about, you mentioned personalization, right, as something that you thought might be further advanced. Do you keeping an eye out on startups that can really help that space grow?
We definitely are. And it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out over the next year or two, because machine learning has obviously been around for a long time and has been very helpful in how we manage, how we use the data that we have. We have so much data in this industry, but combining machine learning and generative AI will actually produce even more powerful tools. Gen AI will actually help with things like customized trip planning and personalized selling and queries on, from the customer and what they actually are looking for, and it can really kind of more personalize what they get back. So we're looking at all those types of companies. Haven't found one just yet, but definitely, think there's a space there. But in general, like right now, we're doing this process at JetBlue where we're going business unit by business unit and talking to them about AI and about what it can do for them and how they can use it in their business, and then introducing them to startups, that could fill a need, but also, what could the data science team do to build something bespoke, right? And so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. We're really excited about this process, and I think we will find some really, really neat startups that probably will be the things that we invest in. I mean, one of our first ones was marketing, and how do you actually advertise to customers based on kind of who they are, right? So using the data we have and actually putting out information to customers, and there's a couple of really great startups there.
So I'm interested in your predictions for the future, how that informs your future investment decisions in other areas that you're sort of looking for the right startups. Is there anything you'd want to share on that?
I mean, it definitely is a lot about AI right now. And we're trying not to put too much emphasis on it. There's obviously a hype cycle going on, and every startup comes to us and says they're an AI company. And FYI, they're not. So we're really trying to suss out who is using AI in a really real way, and not, every company in the world should be an AI company. You should use AI in some way in your company, but that doesn't mean you're an AI first company, and actually a product that is using AI to be better. So we're trying to find the right startups there, but I think that's going to transform so much. And one of the areas that we really like is not this area, but actually operational efficiency, and using the data that we have in our operations with an AI tool that tells you where you're not doing the right things to actually achieve the operational efficiency you're looking for. And so we have a great startup that we've invested in called Asaya, who uses AI, camera vision, and actually analyzes how you're doing your turn at the gate, and tells you where you're falling down maybe a little bit, and how you can do better and actually improve your turn performance. So those types of things are going to be really interesting. Maybe less interesting for the folks here, but interesting for us.
Still very interesting, and maybe less threatening from sort of the ethical issues around AI as well. So it's using it for those internal business process improvements is maybe not as sexy, but could be hugely impactful.
I mean, that's going to be the bread and butter of AI over the next 2 years, is really just, how do you improve the job you do with AI tools? And that's not to say, how do we replace your job with an AI tool? I don't think that's actually where it's going to go. I think it's going to be, how do you do your job better? How do you take repetitive kind of, tasks that aren't value added and give them to the AI tool and then do the things that you are really good at, right? So I think that's what's coming next. I mean, there's lots of I still love biometrics. I really would like to see biometrics take off, but I'm not sure kind of where that's going to go. But there's some
other. That hasn't taken off.
I don't know. I think actually my theory, take it for what it's worth, this is one person's opinion, I think that biometrics got derailed by COVID. Because I think we were really starting to make some strides in how we use biometrics, things like boarding, processes and things like that. And then those projects got put on hold because of COVID. So I think there's still some opportunity there. And, people are becoming more used to that aspect. TSA is using more biometric data. Obviously, so many people are members of CLEAR. I love CLEAR. It's the easiest process, right? So I think there's an opportunity to find the right space for biometrics, and I think that will be something that'll happen in the next couple years.
This may be like asking you about your favorite child, which we would never do, right? But do you have like one of the investments you made that you just personally feel very connected to or super excited about? And if so, can you share more about that?
Yeah. I really love all of the investments we've made. We've got some great companies in our portfolio, and I love working with the founders. One that comes to mind, because it's been with us for a very long time and is a really successful use case for JetBlue, is we invested in a weather provider called Tomorrow.io. And what they do is these guys are brilliant. And this is how it is when you work with startups. Their first thesis was, you can tell the weather in a very specific location by how the cell signal attenuates between towers. So a cell signal between towers will tell you if it's raining, for example, or if there's wind or whatever, if you study how it actually moves. Fascinating. And then they added in all the connected devices and cars and things like that. So they know if that data is shared, they know if like the windshield wipers are on. So their whole theory is, we can do weather in a hyper localized way. It's not, it's raining in Boston, it's raining at Logan Airport, so that helps you make better decisions operationally, which is why an airline invested in a weather company. And they're doing really great. And they're throughout JetBlue, airports uses them, they're in our SOC, they're providing our weather data. And I personally love their product, and I use it myself. And I've been close to those guys for a long time, because we made that investment in 2017. So we've been with them through almost their whole life cycle. So that's just one that I spend a lot of time with. But I really do love so many of our startups. We have just really some great products out there and great teams that are doing fascinating work. And that's, I think, the really neat thing about working with startups. It's just such a different, mindset, when you work with a startup versus, a more established company. And they're brilliant. They come up with brilliant solutions.
And courageous.
Personally
courageous. That was kind of my closing question. We're almost out of time, but I think what I enjoyed when I got to know you is what a fascinating career to work both with these well-established companies and then with all these startups and being a startup yourself. So, maybe it's obvious, but I'd like to hear your perspective on like the differences between the two types of organizations, the pros and cons, and maybe if there's any career advice for those in the audience related to choices there, I'd be interested in hearing.
Yeah. The thing I learned about being part of a startup, I think that was a valuable experience. First of all, you go into a startup and nothing is built for you. Every single process that you can think of that you use in your job, every system, every aspect of corporate life is not there, right? So everything has to be built from scratch. And people who, should be working on the website are like, oh my gosh, we have no HR software. So it's fascinating how everybody takes on a different role. Very nimble, very fast moving. You basically run, when you're in a startup. But the tricky thing about being at a startup, and this is where maybe a more established company, kind of wins out, is you don't have any processes. And so what you get is early stage startup workers get kind of a hero mentality. Like I'm the only one who can do this part of my job. And if without me, like basically we can't run this part of our business. And usually that's true. But you reach a point in a startup where you have to grow up and you have to establish all those processes and you have to put the systems in place and you have to hire more people. It can't be a single person who knows everything there is to know about this. And so that's the transition that a lot of people who love startup work, that's when they leave. Yeah. Because now it's becoming a more established company. You know, big kind of legacy companies, they have all that for you. And so if you're the type of worker who wants that support and that structure, that's the right place. If you are the type of person who wants kind of the wild, wild west and to be able to touch anything in the organization that you want, the Startup Life might be for you.
Well, thank you, Amy. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here today with us. We really appreciate your perspectives.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks.